Hello, good afternoon. My name is Phil Jones. I am the technical editor for ProjectorReviews.com. And we are talking about all things dealing with projection. Not only projectors, but all the things you need to connect and test and calibrate. And you need screens, cables, all of that stuff. So we want to cover all that to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to build the best projection system possible. And joining me is one of my buddies, Jason Dustal. How are you, sir?
Phil, how you doing, man? I'm doing great. It's now raining out here in Florida, so this is a perfect time to hang out for a few hours and
Yeah,
just chit chat about all the cool, fun stuff that we get to play with every day.
exactly. Now Jason's title just says Education and Training Manager,
Hmm.
but Jason's like me.
Yeah,
The man's got like 9
it's
jobs.
it's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
So not only do you do this, he's also helps calibrate the projectors for projector reviews before they're
Hmm.
written. I'm trying to get him to write some of these now, so we'll also do the calibrations and the writing, so we can get his impressions directly from him instead of being translated by myself or Art. He also does a lot when it comes to ISF calibration.
Yes,
You help train a lot of those guys. So if you're
tons.
thinking about calibration and how that works, that's important. And so the list goes on and
Yeah,
on and
a little
on.
weird. Yeah.
So, but we're here to talk about AVProEdge,
Yes.
and there's so many products that this company offers that I think that it's almost going to be like a show and tell type conversation. So can you talk about the company and overall what are some of the things that you guys do? Um,
Yeah.
at,
Um, so it's an interesting story, and it's so cool to see how far it's come. It's really unbelievable. The company started because of a need. Our CEO Jeff Murray, who's been in the industry for forever, Lowell Wheeler, who works with us, been in the industry forever. Some of these guys, they used to work for a company called Sencor, and Sencor used to make all the test equipment and a lot of the calibration equipment. And several years ago, they exited that market, exited that business altogether. So a couple of these guys were standing around and going, well, gosh, what are we going to do now? Because we've got this HDMI 2.0 is coming, and nobody's going to make test equipment anymore. So what the heck do we do? So the company actually started off as like an online distribution channel, and they would sell other companies' products and extenders and all kinds of things like that. And Matt Murray, our CTO, who was on the session with us earlier, he was the brainchild behind one of our very first products, and that was the Meridio 6G signal generator, which if you've followed calibration or watched any calibrator / reviewer videos on YouTube, such as Vincent Tio and guys like that, you've probably seen this Meridio 6G generator millions and millions of times. And this was really Matt's brainchild. And after we were able to generate bit perfect reference 18 gig HDMI signals, we started to realize that there's really not any good extenders out there that can do the same, and there's really not any matrix switches out there that can do the same. So it really just kind of spiraled out of control from there, and now we make all kinds of stuff. We've gotten away from, we still have avprostore.com, of course, where you can see and buy all of our product, but we've pretty much focused now on just our product on that page. And we do still do some other third-party things, like, for example, we don't build light meters, so we still carry some light meters and stuff on
Yeah.
AVProStore, but we've really just turned into an all-around HDMI problem-solving company.
Yes.
So we make a lot of stuff that will get installers out of a pinch. For example, you have products like this, and it seems so simple, but this is such a lifesaver. This is a 1 input, 2 output distribution amplifier. So take a situation like, Phil, I know you've probably talked about this until you wanted your head to explode, but customer buys a brand new TV, 4K, HDR, they're super excited. They buy a brand new 4K Blu-ray player, super excited. And guess what? Their AVR is still not going to be able to do 4K HDR. So what do? Do you retire the $3,000 Marantz amp, or do you keep it and maybe upgrade that later? And with a little device like this, super simple. HDMI comes in from the source, one goes out to the TV, one goes out to the AVR, and guess what? You have full 18 gig bandwidth video to your television, and you have all the surround formats that you want coming into your AVR with no compromises. So little guys like this, little scaler tools like this, which will allow you to manage your EDID. It'll allow you to
Yeah.
reclock your HDMI if your cable's
Yeah.
really long and the signal by the time it gets to the projector is kind of messy and sloppy.
Mhm.
These little fix-it tools are real lifesavers.
Yeah. And that's how
For
I met
a
you
lot of
guys. That's how
customers.
I met these guys. Because I told the story. I've told the story a couple of times today.
Yeah.
Um, I used to work for a company that starts with an S and ends with a Y,
Hmm.
pretty big. And I did a lot of custom integration things
Right.
for CD and trade shows. So I
Hmm.
decided I was going to do when HDR came out, about HDR troubleshooting and connecting HDR displays to receivers when they first came out.
Yep.
And no one, it was the Wild West. And I was looking,
Hmm.
and so what I did was I started running around CD. It must have been, it must have been
16,
like
15
16,
or 15 or
15 or
16.
16.
Yeah.
And I was running around, and the day 2 days before the show, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I knew I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about long distance HDMI solutions.
Right.
And before that CEDIA, nothing existed. So I figured I was
Hmm.
going to go to the show and I was going to run around and ask every single major vendor
Right.
if they made long distance HDMI solutions. So I went to everybody and I walked in there and I said 18 gigabits,
Hmm.
20 meters.
Hmm.
Because, and everybody was talking a whole bunch of gibberish. I said, stop. I don't care
That's,
about your
yeah,
444s and your
wasn't the question.
222s. You're trying to baffle me.
Yeah.
18 gigabits in, 18 gigabits out.
Right.
And the only person that actually there was one company that offered optical cables. It was
Hmm.
Celerity,
Sure.
which, and they said, oh, go down there and talk to those AV Pro Store guys. They have some stuff too. So I
Hmm.
went down and I asked them, and I think it was either Jerry or Matt Murray. They were like,
Yeah.
here, we got this.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and in fact, you want to test it? You know,
Here. Here.
use two of these.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use two of these.
Right.
And
Right. It,
I was
it's
like, who are you guys?
it's so funny because we're based out of the U.S. We have our main office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We just opened this awesome office down here in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I live. So now we have AV Pro South. It's all family, family owned, and we started from complete scratch. We give a 10-year warranty on all of our AVProEdge branded
Mhm.
products. We own the factory in China, which is really different than a lot of other manufacturers.
Mhm.
Phil, you've probably been involved in some projects before where we needed something real quick.
Mhm.
Okay, so Matt calls the engineers and says, "Hey, we need to build this thing like right now. Drop what you're doing," and they do it.
And one,
And you just
yeah,
you
one
can't
thing
get
I've
that kind of
noticed,
you can't be that nimble in an OEM type system. You
yeah,
just can't.
and one of these things that every year I would come back and I would throw a bigger hurdle at them. First, it was I need it to be longer, and then I need
Right?
it to be this, I need it to be
Yeah.
that, I need it to that. So the last one from last year was I asked them about. I ran around and I said 18 gigabits, 20 meters
Yeah.
with ARC, and it
Right.
was like chirp, chirp, chirp.
Yep.
No one had anything, and then I walked over to Matt, and he was like, "Here," you know.
Hmm.
So
Here's a good
so
one.
they
Yeah.
actually had one, and then so each time I've looked for something,
Hmm.
or I needed something, you guys have solutions for it. For example, I just set up a nice little lab that I can compare projectors, and I need
Yeah.
to do a lot of side by side comparison. So I was like, man, I really don't want to. I mean, I can use one of my big Marantz or Denon AVRs, but it's a little cumbersome for what I
Cumbersome.
needed
Yeah.
to do. So
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I need a little switcher with dual outs, and you were like, you mean like this one?
Yeah.
You
Which one?
know?
Is that a four
This
by two?
this is a 4x2. So
Yeah.
this is
So
how you notice that I do a lot of side by sides on the
yeah.
website, and this makes it really, really easy for me to plug in, compare that projector
Hmm.
with that project
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
projector. So all of these little tools that you want to talk about. So
Yeah.
you guys
It's
are definitely problem solvers.
it's funny you mentioned the four by two because guess what I have in my own system at home? A four
What?
by two.
A four by
And
two.
and we make it in a few different configurations. We do an 8x2 if you want more inputs, no big deal.
Yes.
We do a 2x4 now, which is we're
Mm-hmm.
calling it the not too big, not too small matrix switch. But like the
Mm-hmm.
4x2 that you just held up a moment ago, which I don't have here unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
four inputs, two outputs, full 18 gigs, full EDID management, all the stuff you'd ever need to either bypass an AVR or do something like what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and comparing two 4K UHD displays or
Yes.
projectors
Yes.
side by side. and they're not, these are not terribly expensive parts either. You know,
no, no,
they're not crazy astronomical prices like you might
yeah.
expect. They're because we have so much control over everything from the
Mhm,
design to manufacturing, receiving, shipping. We do everything ourselves so we can
mhm,
keep things under control price wise.
yep. And each time I keep asking for something, it's funny. I have a whole plethora of stuff here. I feel like I'm almost sponsored, but it's just. But the thing is, this started back when I was at Sony because
Right.
I went to Matt and I was like, we want to connect a professional BVM X300
Hmm.
to a Blu-ray player,
Hmm.
to a 4K Blu-ray player, and the professional monitor doesn't even have HDMI on it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can get something that can convert the SDI to HDMI, but there's no copyright or whatever, and how am I gonna buy
Yep.
it?
Yep.
And Matt was like, here.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and so
I got
every
something
time
for
I
you.
needed something, and then of course, like if you walk into a Best Buy store and you look at the video switching, the cabling,
Right.
all that stuff in a Best Buy store that runs a lot of the retail displays, that
Yep.
stuff comes from you guys as well. So when
Yep.
it comes to
Absolutely.
problem solving,
Yeah.
there's some great things. And like I said, I can't stress how important audio return channel is going to become in like the projector market
Hmm.
because you're getting more and more of these ultra short throw projectors that are coming. Where is it? Right here, where you're going to
Hmm.
be having an ultra short throw projector plugged into a receiver, and they have all of these apps in it. We just had BenQ
Absolutely.
talk about their smart projector,
Yeah.
and Vava was here, and everybody is showing off these great new ones. Samsung launched some, Hisense launches one.
Right.
Um, everybody has a
Hmm.
ultra
It's a
short
hot
throw.
thing.
It's a hot thing. It's the way that the
Yeah.
projection is going to try to open up the projection market to more customers. In order to get the sound out of that to that beautiful AVR
Hmm.
and that upgraded sound system, you got to have ARC.
It's got to come back.
And most of these inexpensive balance do not support it. And by the way, optical does not support multi-channel out of most TVs
Right.
and most of these devices.
Yep.
It'll say Netflix in 5.1 or 7.1 or even
Hmm.
Dolby Atmos, but what you're gonna get from that TV or that display is probably gonna be Pro Logic.
Yep.
So ARC
It,
and eARC is becoming incredibly important.
you have to be careful out there, especially the consumers, because you might see a spec on a TV that says it does support 5.1 Dolby Digital, right? But like the optical out on the display is only going to do 5.1 if you're using the internal tuner. So if you're running
Mhm,
all your sources to the TV and going optical
mhm.
out back to your AVR and expecting to get all the high res multi-channel audio formats and all the immersive stuff, sorry, ain't gonna happen. Just not.
It
It's
ain't it
not.
ain't gonna it ain't gonna
No.
happen. And then, like I said, there is a you do pay a premium for a better product because number one, we just had HDBaset come in a little earlier
Yep.
to talk about the fact that there's lots of these HDMI extenders, but if you do HDBaset, I remember
Hmm.
Daniel from HDBaset was
Yep.
talking to Jeffrey from BenQ, and they make commercial projectors with HDBaset
It's
built in.
so cool.
So you could just buy a transmitter and
Right.
then run the cable
And you're
a,
done.
a crazy distance and plug it right into the commercial projector. I can tell
Yep.
you a story about that. When I worked at a company that started with a Y and ended with an A that makes musical instruments and motorcycles, they also make consumer electronics. And we were doing a we were doing we were helping sponsor a concert. And the bands in the back, I think it was like Big and Rich and somebody else, they
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to watch the SC game
Hmm.
back where the buses were, but the satellite was way up at the front of the arena with the in the regular VIP, and
Yeah.
we ran I think 15 or 1600 feet
Woo.
of Cat 6
Yeah.
over trees, through things, all the way back so we can actually fire up their TVs.
That's funny.
That stuff is possible
Yeah.
with these better solutions.
Yeah.
And a quarter of a mile,
Yeah.
to get from one point
Well,
to the other.
we do some really crazy stuff, man. If you want to get real nuts and talk about distance, our fiber extender, you can go 2 kilometers if you need to.
Yes.
So you start
Yeah.
talking
Well,
about, I mean, stadiums at that point, wrapping
exactly.
cable around a stadium. It's insane.
Exactly. And not only are you going 2 kilometers, you're going 2 kilometers with a
Yeah.
wire that looks like that,
Right. Right.
So
Right.
so
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 you
so
you've
that's
got
absolutely nuts.
you've got the clear stuff, which I love. That stuff that you have is unbelievably uh, just so easy to use for retrofit jobs when you need to go around door sills and underneath, you know, between the carpet and the footer and stuff. Or you could even take that stuff, Phil, and you could take a, you know, think of how thin a putty knife is, right? So you could take a putty knife and you could score drywall, tuck that cable that you just showed into the drywall, and then putty over it. You never see it ever.
Yep.
So it's really, really convenient to use something like that for a retrofit. If it's a fresh build, or hopefully the original installation had conduit in it, you're most likely going to see something like this, which is a traditional, this is Clearline, this is a traditional OM3 fiber cable. So what's really interesting about this, we have a kit that's labeled under our Bullet Train brand. And I didn't mention this before about AV Pro, but in introductions, but we actually have a few brands that are under the AV Pro global umbrella, if you will. So AVProEdge is going to be all of our connectivity devices, the matrix switches, the extenders, the little fix-it tools we're going to talk about today. We also have Meridio, the shirt I'm wearing right now. That's going to be test gear. Things like the 6G we showed you before, the 7G. I've got a Fox and Hound kit here too. We'll look at in a minute. I know you've got one there too, Phil.
Yes.
So under our Bullet Train label, we have this really cool fiber termination kit. This is actually the old case. The new case is like a hard, almost like a road case, like you'd expect to see something kind of like this. But anyway, so this kit, I can take a piece of fiber, OM3, and within about, I don't know, 45 to 60 seconds, I can take every tool that's in this kit and I can terminate this fiber myself easily and safely without having to worry about any. Phil, you probably remember these stories back in the day when fiber was new, about you had to have special tools and special training, and the glass could get into your skin and cause major problems and just all kinds of stuff, man. But now, dude, I'm telling you, in a minute, I could have this cable terminated. There you go. There's the OM3 picture you have up there, right there. And then on the right side of the screen there, you have the two different fiber connectors that are sort of the standards for the industry right now. So on the left side, you see the SC connector. That's the bigger one. The stuff that you'll see on all of our fiber related products will be the connector you see on the right. That's the LC connector. So again, man, if you're doing this installation yourself, or if you're hiring an integrator, look for this kind of stuff, man, because this is what's going to go the distance, and this is what's going to help us get past 18 gigs and even past 48 one day.
Yeah, and like I said, this is good for over 100 or close to 100.
For sure.
Actually, no one knows exactly
There's no
how
test
much
equipment.
you can. There's no test equipment that can measure how much it could actually run.
It's wild, man.
So
It's
you
crazy.
can take that super thin stuff, or this sleeved material, the sleeve
Yep.
type, and you just buy a couple of really small of their extenders, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
And so something like this is one of their smaller extenders here that you
And
could
wait till you see the
actually.
new one. The new
It's
one, the new
smaller than this.
fiber is teeny. Wait, which one do you have? Do you have the newest one?
I'll show you here. Hold on a
You
second.
might.
It is.
Now
Camera.
we have
Good thing
the.
about having cameras.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so we don't. It's not for sale yet, but we have one that's even smaller and thinner than that one too, and we managed to get the cost down. The difference is what you'll see on the picture you have on your slide right there, where it says single fiber. That's the SFP. That device itself, it has a little kind of hinge on it, and you can pop up the hinge and you can pull it out. Now, let's say 10 years from now, you need something that's way more than 18 or even 48 gigs, who knows? But those SFPs you can pull out, buy a new one that can go more bandwidth or further distance even, pop it in, and you just upgraded the little SFP without having to upgrade your whole extender kit. So there's a couple of cool little things about that. Now, the new thin ones that we'll see here, I think by the end of the year, the SFP is not removable. We were able to squish it down and make it even smaller, thinner, lighter, and less expensive too. So it's really cool stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go in here and talk about a few things. So,
sure,
and like I said, you also mentioned that if you're looking for more of an optical cable, I don't want it terminated, but I still want it to be long. You make it. Look, here you go. It's a cable. The bullet trains, and these go beyond 20 meters. They're like, I think Matt said 30 meters with e-arc.
Right.
So yeah, so they're getting there. They're getting longer and longer and longer and longer. One of the
So
benefits of fiber is, as we start talking about this 48 gigabit world, that
mhm,
wire is always going to be that wire, right?
totally,
So
totally.
that's another big thing.
I wish you guys could see this, but I've tried this before on this camera and it's just impossible. But I took one of those AOC cables that you had up on the screen a moment ago and I just lopped
Mhm,
the end off of it. And
mhm,
when you pull away the all the other cables and the insulation and stuff in there, you'll see this one teeny tiny little red cable. And guess what, Phil? There are four, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of clear line fiber inside of that little red cable right there. So guess
mhm.
what? If you run this cable and
Yeah.
something happens to it, it
Mhm,
maybe one of the head ends gets damaged somehow or
mhm,
whatever, whatever,
mhm,
whatever, you
mhm,
can chop the ends off, use those little connectors we just looked at in the fiber
mhm,
termination kit,
mhm,
terminate both sides, and you've got four
mhm.
pieces of fiber in here.
Yeah, because
So
if you
even
look
if
at this one, this sleeved piece, I think I can get it. Hopefully, I can get it to line up.
oh yeah,
I think I saw it.
you can barely see.
Almost.
If you get it up
Hold
against
on a
the
second.
projector, you can see it.
Yeah, let me move it against the light.
Projector gives it a nice black background.
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
There you go. You can see that little itty bitty piece of wire
And
right there.
Phil,
So you
that's
see,
not
there's
even
four of those in there. You see,
right.
there's
And
four of those in there.
that's not even totally it, Phil, because as you've seen in the demos and stuff before, that cable you just showed has a protective polymer around the actual cable. So if you look really closely at it, it's kind of this blue color. And the way the
Yeah,
clear line fiber is, man, you could literally take your thumbnail and your fingernail and sort of peel
mhm,
that stuff back, and then it's like that really thin, almost human hair type
yeah,
size or type of cable that you typically see in optical. So
yeah.
even
It
that
is. It
teeny tiny
is
little cable that's in
tiny,
there is
tiny,
still
tiny.
really even smaller in the real world. Yeah, it's
Yeah, this
crazy.
is
It's super
it's
cool.
just cool stuff.
Yeah,
So
it's a lot of fun.
so like I said, so let's look at let's actually, because
Yeah,
let's just go down your product line. Only way I could
sure.
do that uh, effectively or easily is just to go to your website,
Oh, for
because
sure. It's way
I would
easier. Oh,
be
totally.
I would be I would be writing slides for the rest of my
Yeah,
life.
we don't want to do
So
that.
yeah, exactly. So you still have your AV Pro store, because that's where I remember.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
then
Yep.
and now AV Pro Edge is the products, the stores where you buy them if you decide you want to get them.
Right.
Some of these systems we're actually going to put into one of our new buildings that I'm working for my day job, and I
Yep.
think we're putting in this big 16 switched mirror madness
Right.
in that building, so we can run football games on all the TVs in the
All of
entire
them.
100,000 square foot building.
We
So
have
this
one of
is
those in our office on the other side of this
uh-huh.
wall right here. We have a 16 by 16, the exact same one that's on this picture right there, running our entire office. And that thing's sick, man, because like there's cards for the input and the output side. So
Mhm,
if we wanted to like do something really trick on the output, like put in a
mhm,
Dolby Atmos down mixer, we can do that. We can come out HDMI, we can come out HDBaseT, and eventually, Phil, we're going to come out fiber. So one of
uh-huh,
these days, you'll pull out that HDMI/HDBaseT output card
mhm,
and pop in like maybe an HDMI/fiber card,
mhm.
and now you're running fiber a kilometer, or really as long as you need at this point.
Yeah.
But
Now
that thing's
this is
totally modular. It's a beast.
Yeah, like this is a little nuts for the average consumer, but if you have a large home, or or you're doing commercial stuff, or you're doing
Mhm.
like a large building like us, you can buy it without as many cards in it. So
Totally.
it's the old, like I said, the old buy once, cry once. You start off with, you talk to the job, you spec the person, they go, well, I have 6 TVs in my house, or 10 TVs in
Mhm.
my house, bed, kids rooms, office, den,
Yeah.
outside, pool house, and you'll be amazed how people got 10 TVs in their places,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And you
Oh
could
yeah.
say, why don't we start off with just running 2 or 3 of those,
Totally.
and then we can, and as long as the fiber is ran to the proper location, we
Mhm.
can just keep adding boards and boards and
Well,
boards to this particular guy until you get what you want, which is what we're
see,
going to do. We're not going to use all of these
no
boards
way. Yeah, that's
in
crazy.
in the building, but I know that I have everything I need to get the job done out of this particular piece. So
And
this piece is crazy.
these big matrix switches can be very expensive once you like fully load them. And imagine, as a consumer, you spend, I don't know, 15, $20,000 on a matrix switch, and then 3 years later it's obsolete. I mean, I would be upset as a consumer. So having this thing with the modules and being able to upgrade and stuff is super cool. Just to give you a quick idea, this is an 8x8. It's a one
Mhm,
rack unit. It comes with ears. You can pop it in your rack if you want to. If not, it's got feet. You can sit on top of your other components. This is 8 input, 8 output with all the EDID management, the audio extraction, all the cool stuff that we do on all of our other switches. And we can do this also as a 4x4. And as you showed everybody earlier, thank you for that. We can also do a 4x2. We now have a 8x2. All kinds of different combinations you can do. But I love what you said, Phil, about just doing the cards that you need. I heard about a system the other day we were helping an integrator with. They were using all 16 outputs or maybe 14 outputs, but only 2 inputs. So they just built it to what they needed it to do. And if they ever want to add later, they can add later. The thing's not going to have to go, into the recycle bin.
Yeah. The other thing too was we actually I'm trying to remember which 8x8 you loaned me when I used to do projector shootouts at
Yep.
CEDIA every year,
Mhm.
projector and TV shootouts, and they loaned me a couple of these 8x8s, so we could literally set up 8 projectors and
Yep.
8 TVs
Yeah.
to a single kaleidoscope, and we
Right.
could make sure that all the edits matched and
Yep.
and all the players were happy, and it was a very slim piece. It was
Yeah, it's
also
tiny.
the piece we used to tell a Sony or Oppo Blu-ray player, don't
Yeah.
worry that mastering display doesn't have EDIT, doesn't have
Doesn't matter.
HDCP. It's
Yeah.
make believe it's a Sony TV, not a mastering monitor, and
Yeah.
it worked pretty freaking
Yeah.
well.
And,
I can't remember which one that was. Can't
I
remember which model
think
that
I
was.
know. It's probably the one that we use in the ISF classes for all the TVs and workstations around the room. We
Yeah.
make an 8x8, and the version is called NSFS, no scaling, fast switching. So one of
Yeah.
the big complaints that people have with matrix switches over the years is that the switching's kind of slow. And a lot of it has to do with like, oh, one source is this resolution, the other source is another resolution. And when you start mixing and matching, things have to re-handshake, and the screen could take a second to load up. And people find that kind of frustrating sometimes, and I get that. Now the switch that you have right here, which I think is the one that you were using in those
Yeah, you
days,
just said, yeah, no, NSFS. Is
right?
that the one?
So
Yeah.
here's the scenario, Phil. You've got 4 or 8 or however many, up to 8 sources, and let's say that you are the type of customer who's on the cutting edge. So all of your sources are 4K. Your Apple TV is 4K. Your DirecTV box, your Blu-ray player, blah 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 blah, and all of your displays in your house or in wherever the system's at are also 4K. So we don't need to have the extra scaling and stuff built into that switch. Now, what's really cool about that switch is when you have the sources and the displays matched up when it comes to resolution and things like that, the switching is like boom, instant almost. So yeah, if you're in a situation where you've got the latest sources and the latest displays, and you're not doing this mix and match thing where, oh, the kitchen TV is still 1080p. If you're not doing stuff like that, I love this switch. This is a switch I would put in my own house.
It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I mean, we could just go on. So you have all these different cool switches,
Right.
right? And and then we go from switches to distribution amplifiers. Because
Yes.
sometimes you don't need to switch it. You just need to split the signal 2 ways. So
Right.
I literally keep this little guy in my bag. Like that's the one. This is the one that we talked about before. The
Mm-hmm.
little up. I know we're doing a projection summit. Be quiet.
Yep.
This is the little guy that that you were just talking about. And when I was doing TV side by side
Mm-hmm.
demonstrations, I kept one of these in my bag,
Right.
and people would say, well, I heard that this display is better than that display. And I was like, you want to check it?
Let's check. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's check it,
Um,
So I would just, plug a Blu-ray player to this, plug the 2 outputs into 2 different TVs, and we could do a shootout right now.
yeah.
And and look at the size of this thing.
It's I always say it's the
It's
size of a deck.
absolutely tiny.
Yeah.
Yep. And oh, your teacher's having a problem with the EDIT? Click, click,
Yep.
click. I'll fix it.
Yeah. I've got a
Right,
couple
we can
dip
still
switches
do
here.
our shootout. No excuses.
Um,
No excuses.
there's a couple things about these I do want to mention also. We own a very expensive oscilloscope that we have in the lab, so we can literally see the waveforms of the signal coming in or going out. So what we've noticed over the years, you might have some sources that just have a really bad HDMI output, and by the time that I call it a sloppy signal, by the time it comes out of that source and goes over a long HDMI cable, gets to a projector, the projector might have such a tight tolerance on the HDMI input, it might see that sloppy signal and say, no thanks, right? And you get no picture. You're like, what the heck is going on? So what we do in all of our products, whether it's a little distribution amplifier like this, or the little scaler, or the matrix switch, or the extenders, or anything that's got an HDMI port on it, and for our stuff, everything that we do with that HDMI signal, it comes in, we re-EQ it and re-amplify it and pop it back out again. So even if you have kind of a bad signal coming in, we clean it up and send it going out. So I, like you, carry one of these with me everywhere I go, because we run into situations all the time where the projector's taking forever to lock on or whatever. All we do is we throw one of these in line with the HDMI cable right at the projector and just, you know, Velcro or stick it up there. And real simple, one in, one out. It's just the signal's coming in, getting cleaned up and reamplified, coming right back out again. All of a sudden now the projector locks on right away. So even if you're not using this to do any splitting, you could always use this to reamplify, re-EQ the signal and clean it up too.
Exactly. And you also have like correction tools for EDIT. You have EDIT limiters.
Yep, it's
So
all in
like I
there.
said, so if you want to go in and do, like I said, the one that I use for all of my that's in my rack is the, where is it? The 4.2. Where is it? Where is it? You have so many things. I see the
I
tube, the
know.
scalar. Oh, it's a that's a matrix switch. Mine is a
Yeah.
little 4.2 matrix switch, the little
Mm-hmm.
guy, which is
Yep.
this guy right here. So this is
Yeah.
the little guy that I have right here. Oh, in my
There it is.
little, in my rack.
Yep.
And I have my my Kaleidoscape, my Apple TV, my my I have an Apple TV, a Kaleidoscape,
Yep.
a Panasonic Blu-ray player, and my
Mm-hmm.
7G plugged into this thing.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I can go in and do all of my testing and everything else just using
Sure.
this guy. Couple of buttons, two, you know, both
Yeah.
projectors go to 2, and I can look at what I want. And
Right.
then because most of the projectors I use have no sound,
Yeah.
I pull off an optical and I feed it over to a sound bar. So I'm
Sure.
not sitting here looking at projectors in absolute silence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because
Which
I
gets boring.
so
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, it gets boring
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so as you can see, I mean, some of these things are really some
Yeah.
really cool
we
toys.
have
So
we have a new one called an 8x2, which is the same thing, just with more inputs. And that one actually is like a rack mounted unit. So well, there's one that's not, and there's one that is. So you can get the 8x2 regular, or you can get the 8x2 RM. The RM means rack mount. It's a really cool piece that fits in the rack just like the rest of the components, and you know, seamlessly blends in with the rest of the system. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I mean, so we got all, so you go from so if you go, I mean, this website, if you haven't had a chance to go, it's called
Mm-hmm.
AVProEdge.com. If you want to go in, if you're looking for any kind of solutions like this. And we haven't even gotten to the other websites, which we'll get to next
Yeah.
in the next hour. So we have all our distribution stuff. We got our matrix switchers. What are the audio tools? What's that for?
A couple things really. It's just stuff that people need and ask for all the time, like that guy right there, a digital analog audio converter. You know, when have we've all needed one of these at some point. So there's a couple little audio tools in the mix that again, installer tools, integrator tools that will help. I mean, I used to use one of these in my system. My 2-channel system is all 1960s Macintosh tube stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
But the one of the TVs I had in the past, I think it was my Panasonic Plasma, but one of them I could only come out optical. I couldn't come out analog on that TV. So, you know, toss one of these in there, convert the optical over to analog to feed your analog 2-channel system, and boom, there you go. That's not the only use case for it. That was my use case for it, but you can do a lot of cool things with that.
Yes. I mean, yeah. So like I said, there's lots of little things. There's the
Oh yeah, hit that one.
the ones that extract this one. Now, what is this guy?
This
Let
thing's
me
so
see. What is
sick.
this guy?
I don't quote me on this because I don't know this statistic as of right now today, but when this came out, it was literally the only product in the world that did what it does, and it might still be. So picture this scenario, Phil. You've probably seen this 1,000 times. You've got a home theater system in a dedicated home theater space in a customer's basement or in their home somewhere. Outside of the home theater room, they have a restroom, and the restroom has a pair of speakers and has maybe a display. So you can go to the restroom without pausing the movie. You know, everyone else can keep watching. You can do what you got to do, hear the movie still and see the movie still. We see this all the time. It might not be a bathroom, it could be a lobby before you go into the theater. could be a TV in the kitchen, doesn't matter.
Yes.
But what that thing will do, so think about this for a second. How do we take a, let's say, Dolby Atmos signal and break it down to 2-channel? So think of it like this. If we're playing Dolby Atmos in the theater and we take the 2-channel off of the Blu-ray player, off of something, and pipe that into the 2 speakers that are in the lobby or the bathroom, what are you going to hear, Phil? You're just going to hear the front, left, and right. You're not going to
No
hear
voice.
the center
Yeah,
channel.
no
You're not going to hear the effects. You're not going to hear all the stuff that you need to do. So that piece that you just had up on the screen, again, only one in the world, will take Dolby Atmos, knock it down all the way down to 2-channel, come back out, feed your Dolby Atmos amp. Then your 2 channels can come off of here, feed another amplifier, and now you've got 2-channel either distributed through the rest of the house or in that lobby or that restroom that's next to the theater.
Yeah.
That capability in that AVDM that's on the screen right there, we now have that as an option on the outputs of some of our matrix switches.
Okay.
So now we're getting to a point where the switch has this built in. You don't have to have an extra box. So
Yeah.
super cool, a big problem solver. You know, this has happened to me before. In fact, when I saw Blade Runner 2049 in the theater, went by myself. I couldn't find anyone to go with me for some reason. I go by myself, like an idiot. I get a Dr. Pepper about this big, which is bad for me for many reasons, but that's my one soda that I just cannot seem to shake. But it's like, man, you know, the end of that movie, the last 10, 15 minutes especially, right? So I had to use I just had to go. I had to use the restroom, man. And I was like running back and forth because I didn't want to miss any of the movies if I could, right? So as I'm going, I'm like, man, I just wish I could hear this right now or see it in some way. And that's the kind of problem that this solves.
Yeah, and like I said, it's pretty rare. Like I said, I will tell you that my other Denon and Marantz receivers actually added something like this
Yeah,
to one of their things, and it
cool.
was people installers love it, but there's not a lot of solutions for that because people want
Right.
to simulcast. Imagine, like, say you bought a Denon or Marantz receiver 2 years
Yep.
ago that doesn't have that feature, or you
Boom.
bought somebody else's great product, and
Yeah.
you have the Super Bowl, and you want to run the game in full surround
Yep.
in your theater, and at the same time pipe that sound out to the patio where you're barbecuing.
Perfect
That is
example.
what this piece is for. And
Yep.
and there's a lot of people that have multi-zone systems in their house, and they can't do that. So
Right.
you could actually take this and have it running your, I don't know, your Macintosh multi-channel home theater system can be
Yeah.
piped into this, and you can
Sure.
be piping this out
Yep.
to feed a pair of Sonos speakers.
All day,
You
every day,
know,
man.
so there's a lot of capabilities in here. So
Yep.
like I said, there's some cool solutions. So
Yep.
let's go through here on some other things. Um, Integration tool. Okay.
Mhm. There's the
Um,
scalers. Here's
okay.
the new
So
one,
there's the
by the way.
scalers. Okay.
I've got the new
Hold on
one
here.
here.
What's the new one? Let me see what the new one looks
I've
like.
just got to find it. My stack of stuff here. Here we go. Okay, so we talked to Danny earlier all about HDBase T, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, it's. Oh, this isn't actually the one I thought it was. That's okay. This will still do. We have an HDBase T version of this coming, where it'll be HDBase T in and then HDMI out. So this will be your HDBase T receiver, and it'll
Mhm.
also be your EDID manager and scaler and all the other things too. And what's different and unique about it is that, you know, for the longest time, our extender products have had EDID management built in. That's very common for us now. In fact, I think every single one of our extenders at this point has EDID management.
Mhm.
But for the longest time, they didn't have scaling.
Mhm.
As you know, scaling is it's not the easiest thing to do. The chips take up a lot of space. They put off a lot of heat, stuff like that. So packing all that into one chassis with HDBase T, it was difficult, right? Well, not anymore. We've got that now. So what you're going to see pretty soon is it's an scaling HDBase T receiver. So why would you want to use something like that? Let's think of it this way. Let's say you have that big 16 by 16. Let's not even go that crazy. Let's say you have a 4x4 matrix switch, 4 inputs, 4 outputs, right? 3 of the TVs are 4K UHD. Awesome, right? But the kitchen TV is 1080p. Who would put a 4K TV in the kitchen if the TV that's in there works fine? I get that, right? That's okay. So why would you want to scale the signal down? If I try to play 4K through a 4K system, but one of the TVs is 1080p, that 1080p TV, guess what? It's not going to play,
Mhm.
right? So what do? You go back to your source, you dumb the whole system down to 1080p. Now all the
Mhm.
displays are showing a picture. But guess what? It's a 4K source and you got 3 4K TVs in there. So you had to dumb the whole system down to 1080p just to make one TV happy, and not an ideal solution. So if I took one of these, now this is just the regular, forget what I said before for what I'm about to say about the HDBaseT stuff. So this is called an SC2. This is the second gen of our scaler. HDMI comes in, HDMI goes out. On the top here, or the bottom rather, I've got a whole list of different EDIDs, and I can configure the dip switches, or I'm sorry, the buttons on the front for whatever EDID I want or whatever scaling I want. So now I can put one of these at the 1080p TV, scale it down to 1080p. The other 3 TVs are still 4K. They're happy. This TV that's 1080p is getting a picture. Everybody's happy. In fact, what's cool about this one, and really the big difference, Phil, the little one that we all love and we've used for years now.
Because that's this guy right here, which says, tell the Blu-ray player we're all 4K, and then when it goes into that thing, and then it takes it and knocks it down for the HD TV. So you don't dumb down your entire system for the lowest quality system in your display in your room.
The small one, the SC1, our first version of this, and not that this one replaced this one. They live together, but our first version of it, you could scale from 1080p up to 4K, or you could go from 4K down to 1080p. That was fine, no problem. You could do that all day, every day. Well, what if the TV in the kitchen is 720p, or maybe somebody's got a 480 something laying around still? The SC2 will go all the way up to 4K, all the way down to 1080p. We actually use one of these in our training room in South Dakota because just for giggles, we kept our 480p Runco plasma, which I'm sure you remember. So
what?
On the front, why not? It's cool. So the front end of the training room has a rack full of 4K sources. We've got a bunch of 4K TVs around the training room, and then the Runco 480p plasma is over in the corner. The big, giant, thick, heavy thing. So with that scaler, guess what? Every TV plays, even if the source is 4K. Pretty cool.
So I just saw Chris jump on for a second. I bet you Chris has probably used a couple of these little tricks too.
Oh, I'm sure. Sure.
In his because like I said, I can't tell you how many times I've pulled out some of these cool little gadgets, or I call you guys and say, hey, we got a problem at a trade show, or can I loan this, can I borrow that, and those types of things. And then and of course we can go into you guys have a whole cable lineup we haven't even gotten to. So, but if you're looking for the better cables, I love these bullet train cables. I tell people all the time, a lot of times a cable, I look for a speed on the cable.
Sure.
Because I have been places where they say, oh yeah, that cable supports we support 18, but then in small print it says up to 6 meters. But they don't tell you that the 10 meter doesn't do it. But in the small print, so I say look for it should be printed across the cable itself. And of course, if you're gonna utilize those types of cables, I always say make sure that it's printed on there. And one of the things that you got to test it, right? So number one, it needs to be it should be at least said on the cable, on the box somewhere that says this supports. And if you look at a bullet train, it says 48 on the box. Period. And then and these passive copper cables say 18 on the box. And then you guys make the tools to test it. I can't tell you because everybody wants to blame the black box when you're dealing with when I was always it was working perfectly fine when it was
working yesterday.
This is the one I get. This is the call I get. When I plug my game system directly into my TV, it works just fine. But then when I plug it in through your receiver, it does not. Your receiver broke.
Your receiver sucks.
And I said, okay, how long is the cable going from the from the TV to the receiver? And they go, oh, it's 8 meters. It's like 5 meters or 4 meters. Okay, no problem. How long is the cable going from the source to the receiver? And they go, oh, 3 meters. I'm like, you're not using a 5 meter cable now, you're using an 8 meter cable. So so that's where this type of stuff comes in. To verify. Let me put it over here.
And Phil, if you want, I can literally live demo this right now in just a few seconds if you want to, if you guys want to
do
see
it real
it.
quick.
So yeah, one thing I want to point out about the cables, and us being the manufacturer, owning the factory, and all that great stuff we talked about before, we take feedback from our customers very seriously. And a lot of the products that we've developed over the years, like the little SC1 scaler and just some of the cool little features that you find in our other stuff, that's directly from feedback from installers. This came out of that actually. So what you'll notice on the bullet train cables on each end, there's some numbers, right? And they match. So if you're an installer, you've seen this before a million times, Phil.
Yeah.
You're going to install the rack or start getting the system connected, and you've got 14 HDMI cables coming out of the wall, and you're like, which one is which? Which one goes to this room? Which one goes to that room? Who knows? But with the serial numbers being labeled on both ends, it sounds like a really simple little thing, but that just it saves a ton of time on the installation side. So let's assume this is a cable that's questionable, or you don't know, it doesn't say 18 gigs on it, or maybe it's a cable you pull out of a drawer somewhere. You want to know if you can use it in your system. We're going to take the cable, we're going to plug it into the analyzer. We're going to take the other end of the cable and plug it into the generator. Okay. Then I go to the analyzer, and on the analyzer, I have a button right here that says cable test. So I push the cable test button, and then I can test for whatever format I want. So if I want to push the limits of this cable, I select 2160p60 at 18 gigs. I just push OK. And then the analyzer is going to talk to the generator, and we're going to make sure the 5-volt is OK, which it is. We're going to make sure the 3 TMDS channels are OK. They should say 0 errors as soon as the cable test is done. Then it checks the DDC, then it checks the hot plug, and guess what?
And you're good.
I've got an OK, I've got 0, 0, 0, and I've got a pass and another pass. So I can take this cable now and I can bury it in the wall. I know it's not going to be a problem.
Exactly.
It takes a minute. It's super cool.
Yeah. And we tell people all the time just to cover your butt,
Yeah.
to make sure that you test your cables.
Absolutely.
Just to cover yourself. Where'd you go, Jason? You disappeared.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I don't see you. You unplug your HDMI cable.
Yeah, I know, right?
There
I
he
must
is.
unplug my
There
HDMI cable. That was weird. I didn't touch anything. Yeah, who knows?
So just as a person to save your well-being, if you have one bad cable, you can bring the whole system down. So
Totally.
test. Oh, I can actually tell you another reason thing about that, how this little guy makes a difference.
Yeah.
When the Apple TV first came out, people were complaining that their stuff was not working. Their Sony projectors.
Please don't remind me.
Blah. So, and I was like, huh. So I took the analyzer, because I had I have both a Fox and a Hound at that time and a 6G, and I took this little guy and I plugged it into the Apple TV.
Yeah.
And I played a movie and it popped out 18.
Yeah.
And 18 gigabits per second.
And you're watching
4K
like the Golden
60.
Girls. Yeah.
And I'm 4K 60 HDR, 18 gigabits. And I'm like, yeah, I'm watching like I Love Lucy. What the heck is going on?
Happening here?
So we started talking. I was like, and then the reviewers are emailing, oh, it doesn't work. What's going on? And we started talking, and everybody started testing and jumped on Apple. Like, dude, what are you doing?
What are you guys doing?
Don't make everything 4K, 60p HDR.
Right.
Leave it the way it is. And then there was enough of us poking at them from,
it was bad.
I'm sure, guys like Chris Deering, who's probably hiding in the background.
Yeah.
You guys,
his phone was going off the hook. Yeah, ours was too.
Rob Saban,
Vincent.
we're all like, what the hell,
Yep.
So, and then next thing you know, match format, match frame rate, and now I gotta the picture look better, and everybody's 10 gigabit input projectors and TVs all started working. So this little guy is a cool little tool for that type of stuff.